So I picked a piece of this silver sheen obsidian, and I wanted to see if I could take some large flakes off of here and reduce it down to a freeform core like the Native Americans did. And from a preform core you have a lot of options, but it's obstinate material. It's gorgeous rock. I don't know if you can see the silver sheen banding in there, but it shows up really well in arrowheads and projectile points too. But I'm just learning, so I end up wasting a lot of this rock. Ideally, I can hit it such that I can knock off larger flakes that I can then use for other arrowheads and spear points. But of course that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you get dust and you get mishits and you get fractures in the wrong places, and it's a learning process. So I've got some leg protection here so I don't tenderize my leg too badly, certainly in the early stages where the stone's rather large. And then I've got a piece of pig skin here that some very generous pig donated to me, and this will keep any shards of obsidian from causing me to use the fabulous healthcare system of this country. Here's my piece, and the idea is for me to use this aboriginal stone. It's very old. Actually, I just found it in our garden. I thought this looks like it has a pretty good texture to it. It's nice and hard. You can see where I pitted the edge already using it. And this is what the Native Americans would use. They didn't have fancy copper boppers and billets and things. They had rocks, and so they would use hard rocks to break other rocks. And there's no reason we can't do the same thing and learn from them. Once I reduce it down a little bit, I will probably use this copper bopper, which has seen a lot of abuse from a beginner, me, and I've malformed. I'll shape the top of that, and I'm going to make some new ones. Kudos to Jim Wynn, Paleo Man Jim, for demonstrating how to make copper boppers. I've got to recognize him because he's an inspiration to me. Also, is another flint napper is Flint Napper Jimmy. He's got some excellent videos out there online for beginners, and so I'll go from a large, fairly heavy lead-weighted copper bopper to a smaller one to get smaller pieces. So as I get smaller and smaller, I'll be getting closer and closer to my target. So let's start with trying to reduce some of this. So what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for angles that are less than 90 degrees. For instance, this angle right here over this rounded area is not a really good angle for me to start with. I want something that's less than 90 degrees. This sharp edge is obviously less than 90 degrees, and that's a good starting place. But this edge is so thin, so razor sharp here, certainly in this area. Here it's a little bit thicker, but what I need to do is I need to take some of this edge off, so I'm going to lose some material here. I need to reduce that because if I were to strike that, it would just crush. It's not strong enough. That thin of an edge is not strong enough to take any kind of a blow. So I've got to visualize in my mind what I'm going for. And so I'm looking for angles like this that is less than 90 degrees, where I can reduce in that direction, or I can reduce in this direction with the rock. So I've got a really thick section here, this bulb here. This is really the thickest part. And so the process, of course, not of course, but the process is to thin it. I've got to thin this slab to an even consistency across. That's what gives an arrowhead or any projectile point its ability to fly, and is a balance, is thinness and a balance. So I've got to spend a lot of time working on the thicker parts of the rock, try and get them down. The thinner parts, like I mentioned before, I've got to waste some area there to strengthen that. And so I want to maintain as much length as I can, and I want to maintain as much width as I can, so that I don't end up with a tiny little nodule that's too thick to fly and too good for any purpose. So at the same time that I'm thinning it, I'm also thinking about how can I pull off pieces that are large enough to use for other tools. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to go around this edge and look for very, very thin edges that will not take a blow. And I'm going to crush those back a little bit. I'm going to turn the edge on those so that I can use that area. I'm going to go all around the thing, just like I would with a small projectile flake, or a flake that I'm going to turn into a projectile point. Which direction do I go? Well, I want to crush in the opposite direction of the direction I want to take flakes off. And it occurs to me that I probably want to take the most flakes off on this fat area, this fat side. So if I crush the edge in this direction, I'll be able to come back and use those crush places as opportunities to flake off large pieces this direction. You can see how little energy is required from a nice large hammerstone like this. And the little pieces that are coming off are just as sharp as can possibly be. So I don't want to drag my hand through there or I end up with all these little cuts. How that happened. Alright, so I've crushed that edge back now, and now I can use these platforms, if you will, to strike off larger pieces, because now it's thick enough to take that blow. With a really sharp edge here too, and I'm going to probably want to come back this direction with my strikes, so I'm going to sharpen the edge this direction, give myself some steps to use. So let's come across this edge. Get that chunk out of there. What I'm doing is I'm turning the edge here, meaning that I'm producing